Hey, what's going on YouTube? Today I'm breaking down my pre-season 1 Battlefield 6 review. We'll talk about what the community wanted, what we actually got, and where this game stands heading into its first full season. Going into its launch, Reddit and the broader community were loud about three things. They wanted minimal crossover and over-the-top skins, a grounded game with minimal advanced movement, and the removal of skill-based matchmaking. However, that is really at the top of Reddit's wishlist and is in no certain terms representative of every gamer because somebody has to feel strongly enough about a topic to post about it on Reddit. Games with the above are doing just fine. Saying that there was hype for this game is an understatement because over 1 million played the beta. We haven't seen a consolidated player base for an FPS like this since the Modern Warfare 2 and Halo 3 days, and I'm super happy to see Level Cap getting views again. Yes, it's very possible some money exchanged hands for positive coverage, which means you do have to take some of their takes with a grain of salt. And other reviewers are actually pandering to Reddit's most upvoted takes instead of also speaking their minds. Battlefield 6 plays well, with performance stable and servers stable for the most part. There are some complaints about hit registration and netcode, but there's always complaints about hit registration and netcode, and few of those end up being actually legitimate. The graphics are dated, and that's being nice with describing how the game looks. The good news is that most playing on PC should be able to run the game smoothly even with older hardware. This is a departure from the norm of pushing the bleeding edge of performance like Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, where gamers will buy new hardware just to play those games. Battlefield 3's single-player jet mission, to this day, is still fondly remembered as an all-time jaw-dropping visual masterpiece. Battlefield 6 doesn't have any memorable moments like base jumping from Damavand Peak or seeing the Siege of Shanghai skyscraper revolution in Battlefield 4. There is more destruction in Battlefield 6 than Battlefield 3, 4, and the mess that was Battlefield 2042, but I don't think there's quite as much destruction as Battlefield 5, which is fine because there's still plenty of destruction in Battlefield 6, and it's not just visual eye candy, there is actual tactical relevance in destroying enemies' cover or making some of your own. There are some bugs related to the UI, like sometimes I swapped my RPG and it showed my carbine having 3 out of 3 rounds left. And some do say that the game launcher UI is uninspiring and unintuitive, but remember, we used to have to launch the game through a browser. At least we don't have to click through 3 pages of skin advertisements to buy before we can actually select our game mode. There are some ragdoll physics that are glitching, but otherwise you should not expect to run into too many game-breaking performance problems. Overall, I do enjoy the gunplay in Battlefield 6. It has the meltiest time to kill in almost any first-person shooter I've ever played. It's about 10 to 20 milliseconds faster per weapon class than even Call of Duty. Besides the M4A1 and all of the PDWs, especially the MP5, there are no obvious culprits to any handful of weapons being overly dominant. There's that Incredibles quote that comes to mind: if everyone's super, no one is. Weapons have a bloom or spread value similar to how Halo Reach's DMR works, and I was right that there was some back-end problem with coming out of Sprint not resetting your spread as it should, especially with some attachment combinations, but this will be fixed with the Season 1 patch. My tinfoil hat theory on why there is a small variance element is that eliminating the variance would make the weapons even meltier than they already are. Of course, we don't need to prove that. And to fine-tune the time to kill, there is that small randomness, and it is conceptually possible that you will lose a gunfight due to bad luck, but 95 out of 100 times you would have won that gunfight, and aiming dead center mass all but eliminates any variance due to bloom. There is no shortage of weapon variety and functional attachments, but there are only 3 sniper rifles at launch. Did I say lunch? I mean launch. Sorry. Health regeneration behind cover takes place too fast, and in previous Battlefield games it was a legitimate resource to manage, and that makes the medbags actually do anything. And now the medbags are all but worthless because everyone gets back to health so quickly. And I do know that this is to make suppression actually do something, but health regeneration is a little fast, and I hope that it's possible to get fine-tuned without actually breaking the game. But now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the maps that are way too small. This was a legitimate concern for those who played the beta, and we all thought it would be addressed by the full launch, but now that the game is here, we can see that that is simply not the case. It's not hyperbole to say that these are the most linear 64-player maps in franchise history. There are few traversable paths for vehicles. Tanks can trample over some destroyed buildings, but they often end up in kill boxes. It's a miserable experience for attackers on Stage 1 of Merock Valley. New Sobek City is the most uninspired / boring / AI generated map ever. Actually calling New Sobek City AI generated is an insult to the $1 trillion the world has spent on chatbots and data centers. The interiors of the New York City maps don't even make sense for the most part, because the Rotterdam BF5 map had plenty of indoor areas, but they had a tactical reason for being there. The increased player movement speed makes the maps feel even smaller, like Operation Firestorm, which is supposed to be, I think, the second largest launch map, feels tiny. There are plenty of Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 Day 1 maps that were like 80% armor with 20% infantry, and now all Battlefield 6 maps with vehicles feel like they're 80 to 90% infantry. The unlock rate for weapon attachments is way too slow, and nobody should be surprised if EA releases an accelerated unlock as paid DLC. The associated class challenges also seem like they're AI generated without testing for their feasibility. Soldier customization in Battlefield 6 has taken a step back compared to Battlefield 5's customization, because you can't, as of right now, do individual face modifications. Like even in Battlefield 5, you could change your face to have stripes and things. Okay, so besides weapons, this Battlefield 6 has possibly the least content variety of any launch Battlefield after 3. We already know that there are water levels planned, but I'm stunned Zodiacs, Wave Runners, and PWCs are not in the game day one as they were in Battlefield 4. So after all of that, why are we in a worse place from where we started? Battlefield 6 suffers from stiffer competition than previous peak popularity in the Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 days, because it's now competing with not only Call of Duty, but you've got hero shooters, battle royales, and even MMO FPS games. One reason Battlefield 2042 did not end up being as successful as it should have been was because it tried to please too many crowds, and in doing so, ended up pleasing very few. Battlefield as a series' previous success comes from being a genuine alternative, aka doing something no one else could hold a candle to. It still has the benchmark for larger scale destruction and is second only to Halo in seamless vehicle and infantry integration. However, the critical streamlining of the gunplay and maps is too much concession to other audiences, aka you don't out Call of Duty itself. In my honest opinion, Battlefield 6's success will hinge on what comes next, not what's here now. The franchise was built on moments. Skyscrapers collapsing, jets breaking the sound barrier overhead, tanks rolling through rubble while squads scramble behind them. It wasn't just a shooter, it was a sandbox for chaos, teamwork, and pure spectacle. The mechanics this time are solid. The gunplay is tight, with performance stable. But the magic just isn't there. Battlefield 6 feels like it's waiting for its own wow moment, the kind of memory that defines an entire generation of players. At the same time, Battlefield 6 is launching into an era of crossover fatigue, where every battle pass has to have some pop culture tie-in, and every skin feels like it came from a brand deal. No one wants to get domed by Nicki Minaj dual-wielding shotguns on a snow map. Players are tired. They want immersion back, not another corporate crossover event disguised as, air quotes, content. It makes me sad that Battlefield 6 may be the most technically polished, but fundamentally boring first-person shooter we've had this generation at launch. And yes, before anyone says it, EA has always worn the, air quotes, evil corporation label, right next to Ubisoft, which is a whole nother rabbit hole. I'm not an EA shill, but credit where it's due. EA stuck with Star Wars Battlefront 2 until it became something genuinely excellent, and somehow that redemption arc never got the recognition it deserved. Meanwhile, CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077 launch was a disaster of historic proportions, and yet they're above criticism. Double standards, much? So yes, Battlefield 6 doesn't need to reinvent itself, it just needs to remember itself. We just have to stay positive that EA can turn Battlefield 6 into the same kind of love letter to fans that Star Wars Battlefront 2 eventually became. If DICE can bring back the ambition, the unpredictability, and those unforgettable, only in Battlefield moments with its upcoming maps and seasons, then maybe, just maybe, we'll stop comparing it to everything else because it'll finally stand on its own again. Thank you for watching my video review. My name is David, and I hope to see you in the next one.